This story is titled My Roommate Has Been Catfishing Me as My Online Girlfriend for 8 months, and I just found out by complete accident. Hey Reddit, I'm a 25-year-old guy and I'm currently having what I can only describe as a complete mental breakdown. I discovered something 2 days ago that has turned my entire understanding of reality upside down, and I honestly don't know what to do or how to process this. I need to tell someone about this insane situation because keeping it to myself is making me feel like I'm losing my mind. Let me start from the beginning so you can understand the full scope of how messed up this is. About a year ago, I moved to a new city for a job opportunity. I'm a software engineer and got recruited by a pretty good tech company that required relocating across the country. I didn't know anyone in the new city, so I found a roommate through one of those roommate matching apps. His name is Alex, he's 26, also works in tech but for a different company, and when we met to check out the apartment, he seemed like a normal, decent guy. We signed the lease together and moved into a pretty nice 2-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood. Living with Alex was fine at first. We weren't close friends or anything, but we were cordial roommates. We'd chat in the kitchen sometimes, occasionally watch a movie together on weekends, split chores fairly, paid bills on time. Nothing remarkable, but nothing problematic either. Alex was kind of quiet and kept to himself mostly. He worked from home a lot, was into gaming, didn't seem to have a huge social circle. I was busy adjusting to my new job and new city, so I wasn't really focused on making deep friendships with my roommate anyway. About 2 months after moving in, I joined this online community for people who are into indie game development. I've always been interested in game design as a hobby, and I thought it would be a good way to meet people with similar interests since I didn't know anyone in my new city. The community had forums, Discord servers, regular online meetups, the whole thing. That's where I met someone I'll call Emma. Emma and I connected pretty much immediately. We met in a discussion thread about narrative design in RPGs and we just clicked. We started DMing on Discord, then moved to texting, then video calls. She was funny, smart, passionate about game design, and we had so much in common. She told me she was 24, lived about 3 hours away in a smaller city, worked as a freelance graphic designer, and was also relatively new to her area. We talked every single day. Good morning texts, throughout the day messages about random stuff, long video calls at night where we'd just talk about everything. Our conversations were easy and natural. She got my sense of humor, I got hers. She was supportive when I had rough days at work. I was there for her when she had difficult client projects. Over the course of a few months, I developed real feelings for her, strong feelings. The video calls were where I really fell for her. We'd spend hours on video chat, sometimes just working on our own projects while on camera, keeping each other company. Emma was beautiful, with long dark hair, bright eyes, and amazing smile. She was a little camera shy, she said, and sometimes the connection would be bad so the video would freeze or get pixelated, but we still managed to have great conversations. She'd show me her design work, I'd show her the game prototype I was building, we'd talk about our dreams and goals and stupid funny stories from our past. After about 4 months of talking every day, we decided we were in a relationship. We hadn't met in person yet because of our work schedules and the distance, but we were committed to each other. We talked about me visiting her city or her coming to mine, but something always came up. She had a big client project, I had a work deadline, her car broke down, I had to travel for work, there was always something. But we were planning to meet soon, definitely by the 6-month mark. I told Alex about Emma pretty early on. I was excited about this connection and I guess I needed to talk to someone about it. Alex seemed supportive, asked questions about her, seemed genuinely interested. He'd occasionally ask how Emma was doing, said it was cool that I'd found someone I connected with. Sometimes when Emma and I were on video calls in my room, Alex would be in the living room or his own room, and I'd mention to Emma that I had a roommate. She said she lived alone and sometimes envied that I had someone around so I wasn't completely isolated. As our relationship developed, Emma and I started getting more intimate in our conversations. I'm not going to go into detail, but we had the kind of conversations couples have when they're into each other and haven't been able to be physical yet. We sent photos, though Emma was always a bit shy about it and preferred when the lighting was dim or artistic. We talked about what we'd do when we finally met in person. We said I love you. This was a real relationship to me, even though it was online. The 6-month mark came and went without us meeting. Emma's grandmother got sick and she had to spend time helping her family. Then I had a major project at work that consumed all my time for weeks. Then Emma said she was dealing with some anxiety issues and needed to focus on her mental health. I was disappointed but understanding. Mental health is important and I wanted to support her. We agreed we'd meet when she felt ready, no pressure. Meanwhile, my relationship with Alex as roommates continued to be fine. He was still quiet and kept to himself, but occasionally we'd hang out and play video games together or order pizza and watch something. He never brought friends over, never seemed to date anyone, just worked and gamed mostly. I sometimes felt bad that he seemed lonely, but he said he was introverted and preferred it that way. Around the 7-month mark of my relationship with Emma, something started to feel a little off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but some of her excuses for why we couldn't meet started to feel less convincing. Also, her video call quality seemed to get worse, like she was always having connection issues. Sometimes we'd be on a call, and the video would freeze on a still image for so long that I'd ask if we should just switch to voice only, and she'd say no. She liked being able to see me even if I couldn't see her clearly. I started to feel a bit insecure about the whole thing. Was Emma real? Was she who she said she was? I felt guilty even thinking that because we'd been talking every day for 7 months and she'd never given me a concrete reason not to trust her. But the lack of meeting in person was starting to weigh on me. I brought it up with her gently, saying I really wanted to meet face to face, that it was important to me for our relationship to move forward. Emma got emotional and said she wanted that too, but she was dealing with some personal stuff that made it hard right now. She asked if I was losing faith in us if I didn't trust her. I felt terrible for making her feel that way and reassured her that I did trust her. I just missed her and wanted to be in the same physical space. She said soon, definitely soon, she just needed a little more time. I talked to Alex about it one night when we were having beers in the living room. I told him I was feeling frustrated that Emma and I hadn't met yet and was starting to have doubts. Alex listened and said that long-distance online relationships were hard, but if Emma and I had a real connection, it would work out. He said maybe I should plan a surprise visit to her city if I was that concerned, just show up and see what happens. I thought about it but decided that felt too aggressive and stalkerish. Then 2 days ago, everything exploded in the most bizarre and horrifying way possible. I was working from home and Alex was supposedly at his office for a rare in-person meeting. I was on my lunch break, eating at the kitchen table while scrolling through my phone. Emma and I had been texting throughout the morning as usual, just normal everyday stuff about our days. My phone was running low on battery, so I went to grab my charger from my room. But when I got to my room, I realized I'd left my charger in the living room the night before. I went back to get it, and that's when I noticed Alex's bedroom door was slightly open. Alex always kept his door closed. It was like an unspoken rule in our apartment. We both kept our bedroom doors closed for privacy. The fact that it was open struck me as odd, especially since he wasn't home. I walked past and glanced in, not snooping, just curious. And that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. On Alex's desk, visible through the crack in the door, was his computer setup. He had multiple monitors, which I knew because I'd been in his room once or twice when he invited me to check out his gaming rig. But what I saw on one of the monitors made me freeze. It was a video call interface that I recognized as Discord, and on the screen was me, or rather, a video feed of me sitting at the kitchen table from a few minutes ago. I could see myself on his screen, eating lunch and looking at my phone. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Why would Alex have a video feed of me? I pushed the door open wider, my heart starting to pound. The Discord window showed a conversation, and the username at the top made my stomach drop. It was Emma's username, Emma's profile picture, Emma's account, and the video feed was labeled as coming from a camera in our apartment. I stood there in complete shock, trying to understand what I was looking at. Then I noticed other things. There were photos on Alex's desk, printed photos, and I stepped closer to look at them. They were photos I recognized, photos that Emma had sent me over the past months. Photos of her in various poses, artistic shots, casual selfies. But these were printed on regular printer paper, and there were notes in the margins in handwriting I recognized as Alex's. Next to the photos was a notebook, and I picked it up with shaking hands. It was full of notes about me. My schedule, my interests, things I'd mentioned in passing, details about my life. There were also notes about Emma's backstory, like a character profile. Her job, her history, her personality traits, all written out in Alex's handwriting like he was developing a character for a story. I felt like I was going to throw up. I looked back at the computer screen and saw the Discord conversation history. I scrolling up with trembling hands, and there it was, months and months of conversations between Emma and me. Except it wasn't Emma, it was Alex. Alex had been catfishing me as Emma this entire time. I started clicking through folders on his computer, not even caring that I was invading his privacy at this point because he'd been invading mine in the worst possible way. I found folders full of photos, the photos he'd been using as Emma. They were of a real woman, but reverse image searching them later, I discovered they were from an Instagram model who lived in Europe. Alex had been stealing her photos and using them to create Emma. I found the camera feeds. Alex had hidden cameras in our apartment, in the living room, in the kitchen, apparently even one pointed at my bedroom door so he could see when I was in my room. He'd been watching me, learning my patterns, using that information to be Emma more convincingly. When I'd mentioned something to Emma, she'd bring it up later like she remembered, but really Alex had just watched me on camera and taken notes. The video call setup was sophisticated. Alex had software that could manipulate video feeds, adding filters and effects that made the calls freeze or get pixelated on purpose. He'd been using edited and filtered videos of that Instagram model for the video calls, making it seem like Emma was real and we were actually seeing each other on camera. I found Discord logs where Alex as Emma had practiced conversations. He'd write out things to say, delete them, rewrite them, crafting the perfect responses to make me fall for this fake person. There were documents where he'd planned out the entire relationship arc, when to have Emma express feelings, when to create obstacles to meeting in person, how to keep me invested without ever having to produce a real person. I sat down in Alex's desk chair feeling like my entire reality had shattered. For 8 months, I'd been in a relationship with my roommate who was pretending to be a woman online. Every intimate conversation, every vulnerable moment, every time I'd said I love you to Emma, it had been Alex on the other end. The person I'd fallen for didn't exist. And the person who created her had been living with me, watching me through hidden cameras, studying me like I was some kind of experiment. I don't know how long I sat there. It could have been 5 minutes or an hour. Eventually, I heard a key in the front door and panic set in. Alex was home. I quickly tried to put everything back the way it was, closed the programs on his computer, and slipped out of his room. I went to my own room and closed the door, my mind racing. I heard Alex moving around in the apartment, heard him go into his room. I sat on my bed trying to figure out what to do. Should I confront him? Should I move out immediately? Should I call the police? I felt violated in a way I couldn't even fully articulate. This wasn't just catfishing, this was surveillance, manipulation, and a level of deception that felt criminal. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Emma. From Alex pretending to be Emma, the text said, "Hey babe, hope you're having a good day. Can't wait to talk to you tonight." I stared at the message feeling sick. I was holding my phone in my hand when another text came through. "You okay? You haven't responded to my last few messages." What? He was in the next room watching me through the cameras he'd hidden, seeing that I was in my room looking at my phone but not responding and texting me as Emma to check on me. The level of manipulation was staggering. I turned off my phone and just sat there, unable to form a coherent thought. That night, I pretended everything was normal. I came out of my room, said hi to Alex, made dinner. He acted completely normal, asked about my day, mentioned he was going to game for a while. I said I had work to do and went back to my room. I checked for cameras in my room and found one hidden in a bookshelf, disguised as a regular object. I left it there but covered it with a book. I stayed up all night trying to figure out what to do. I looked up laws about hidden cameras and found out that in our state, recording someone in their home without consent is illegal. I looked up catfishing laws and found that while catfishing itself isn't always illegal, doing it in conjunction with stalking, surveillance, or fraud can be. What Alex had done was definitely illegal, I was pretty sure of that. But beyond the legal issues, I was dealing with the emotional devastation. I'd fallen in love with Emma. I'd shared my deepest thoughts and feelings with her. I'd been intimate with her in ways I'd never been with anyone, and she was fake. She was my male roommate who had created an elaborate fake identity to manipulate me for reasons I couldn't even begin to understand. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on anything. I needed to figure this out. Alex went to his office, and as soon as he left, I went back into his room. I took photos of everything with my phone, documenting the evidence. The computer screens, the notebooks, the printed photos, the camera equipment. I found more notebooks with detailed information about me, my habits, even transcripts of conversations he'd listened to through the cameras. I found something else too. A journal where Alex had written about his feelings. It was disturbing to read. He wrote about being lonely, about watching me and wishing he could be closer to me, about creating Emma as a way to connect with me. He wrote about how much he enjoyed talking to me as Emma, how it felt like the real him could come out when he was pretending to be someone else. He wrote about being in love with me but knowing I was straight and would never be interested in him as he actually was. This added a whole new dimension to the horror. Alex had feelings for me. He'd created this elaborate catfishing scheme because he had romantic feelings for me and didn't know how else to express them. Part of me felt a tiny bit of sympathy for someone so lonely and confused that they'd do something this extreme, but mostly I just felt violated and angry. I spent that day documenting everything and researching my options. I found a lawyer who specialized in privacy law and sent them an email with some of the evidence, asking for advice. I looked into breaking my lease and found that I could potentially get out of it if I could prove the living situation was unsafe or if illegal activity was involved. I looked into restraining orders and found that what Alex had done might qualify. But I still hadn't decided if I wanted to go the legal route or just get out and never see Alex again. Part of me wanted him to face consequences for what he'd done, but another part of me just wanted to escape and try to forget this ever happened. I also didn't know how to even confront him about this. What do you say to someone who's been catfishing you as your girlfriend for 8 months? That evening when Alex came home, I decided I had to do it. I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. I waited until he'd been home for about an hour, until he seemed relaxed and settled in for the evening. Then I knocked on his bedroom door. "Hey, can we talk?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Alex opened the door looking slightly confused. "Yeah, sure, what's up?" I gestured toward the living room. Let's sit down, there's something important we need to discuss. We sat on opposite ends of the couch and I could see him getting nervous. He probably knew from watching me on his cameras that I'd been acting off, that something was wrong. I'd thought about how to approach this and decided direct was probably best. I know about Emma, I said simply. The color drained from Alex's face. He opened his mouth but no sound came out. He looked like he was going to be sick. I found your setup. I saw the cameras, the photos, the notebooks, everything. I know you've been catfishing me this entire time. Alex stood up suddenly, then sat back down, then stood up again. He was shaking. I can explain, he said weakly. I don't know if I want to hear an explanation, I said, but I think you owe me one anyway. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable conversations of my entire life. Alex broke down completely. He started crying, apologizing, saying he never meant for it to go this far. He said he'd initially set up one camera in the living room because he had anxiety about security after someone broke into his car a year ago. He'd seen me on the camera one day and started watching, not in a creepy way at first, just out of boredom. Then he developed feelings for me. He said he was gay but deeply closeted, that he'd never acted on his feelings for men before, that he was terrified of coming out. He said I was funny and kind and everything he was attracted to, but he knew I was straight and would never be interested in him. So he created Emma as a way to be close to me, to have the kind of relationship with me that he wanted but knew he couldn't have as himself. He said it started small, just some messages on Discord pretending to be a woman, thinking it would be harmless fun and would help him work through his feelings. But then I responded and we connected, and before he knew it, he was in too deep. He kept thinking he'd end it, that he'd have Emma break up with me or ghost me, but he couldn't bring himself to do it because talking to me as Emma was the best part of his day. The cameras had expanded, he admitted, as he got more invested in the Emma persona. He needed to know details about my life to make Emma seem more real, to have her bring up things at the right time to keep the illusion going. He knew it was wrong, he said he knew it the whole time, but he couldn't stop. I listened to all of this feeling a complex mix of anger, disgust, and sad pity. What Alex had done was inexcusable, but he was also clearly a deeply troubled person who needed serious help. When he finished explaining, I told him that what he'd done was illegal, that it was a massive violation of my privacy and consent, and that I couldn't continue living with him. Alex panicked at that. He begged me not to move out, said he'd delete everything, remove all the cameras, never contact me as Emma again. He said he'd get therapy, work on his issues, do whatever it took to make amends. He said losing me entirely would destroy him, that our friendship, even as just roommates, was important to him. I told him we didn't have a friendship. Our entire relationship as roommates had been based on lies because he'd been manipulating me the whole time. How could I ever trust anything about him when he'd done something this elaborate and deceptive? Alex kept crying and apologizing. He said he understood if I never forgave him, but please don't go to the police. He said if he got arrested for this, his life would be over. He'd lose his job, his family would find out and disown him, he'd have a criminal record. He begged me to just let him move out instead, said he'd break the lease and I could stay in the apartment, he'd cover all the costs. I didn't know what to say to that. On one hand, I wanted him to face consequences for what he'd done. On the other hand, I could see he was genuinely remorseful and mentally unwell, and I wasn't sure if getting the police involved would make things better or worse. I told him I needed time to think about what I wanted to do, but in the meantime, he needed to remove every single camera from the apartment immediately, give me all the footage and photos he'd taken, and delete Emma's accounts. Alex agreed immediately. He went to his room and started dismantling the cameras right then. He showed me where each one was hidden. There were 7 total in the common areas of the apartment. He gave me external hard drives with all the footage, which I honestly didn't even want to look at but took as evidence just in case. He logged into Emma's accounts on his computer and showed me as he deleted them, the Discord, Instagram, and other social media profiles he'd created for her. Watching him delete Emma was surreal. This person I'd been in love with, who I'd talked to every single day for 8 months, was just disappearing with a few clicks. All our conversations, all our photos together, the entire relationship just gone. It felt like a death in a way, grieving someone who never actually existed. After everything was deleted and the cameras were removed, I told Alex I was going to stay at a hotel for a few days while I figured out what to do next. I couldn't be in the apartment with him anymore. I packed a bag while he watched from his doorway, apologizing over and over. I ignored him and left. I've been at a hotel for 2 days now. I've talked to the lawyer, who confirmed that what Alex did was definitely illegal and that I'd have grounds for a lawsuit or criminal charges if I wanted to pursue them. I've talked to my landlord about breaking the lease, and they were understanding when I explained there was an unsafe situation, though I didn't give details. I've started looking for a new apartment, but I still haven't decided if I want to press charges. Part of me thinks Alex needs to face legal consequences for what he did. The hidden cameras alone are a serious crime, and the catfishing and manipulation on top of that make it worse. He violated my privacy in the most intimate ways possible. but another part of me just wants to move on and forget this ever happened. Getting police and lawyers involved would mean having to relive all of this, explain it to people, possibly have it become public. I'd have to face Alex in court, go through all the evidence, talk about the intimate conversations we had when I thought I was talking to Emma. The idea of that is exhausting and humiliating. I'm also struggling with the emotional aftermath. I was in love with Emma. I was planning a future with her. I'd imagine meeting her, starting a real in-person relationship, maybe eventually moving in together or getting married. I'd shared things with her that I'd never shared with anyone. And she was completely fake, a construct created by my roommate who was in love with me. I feel violated, betrayed, confused, and honestly kind of traumatized. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. If someone could deceive me this completely for 8 months, what else might people be lying about? I find myself questioning everything now, wondering if other people in my life are who they say they are. I'm also dealing with complicated feelings about Alex himself. What he did was terrible, inexcusable, criminal. But he's also clearly a deeply troubled person struggling with his sexuality and mental health issues. I don't forgive him, and I don't think what he did is okay just because he was struggling. But I can't help but feel some level of pity for someone who felt so unable to express their real feelings that they created an entire fake person to have a relationship with me. And then there's the weird, uncomfortable fact that some part of Alex apparently really knows me and connects with me because he created Emma specifically to be compatible with me. All those conversations I had with Emma where I felt understood and accepted, that was Alex understanding and accepting me, even if he was doing it through a fake identity. Does that mean anything, or is it just further manipulation? I've been talking to a therapist since this happened. I found one who specializes in trauma and betrayal, and I had an emergency session yesterday. She said what I'm experiencing is a form of emotional abuse, and that it's normal to feel confused and traumatized. She said I need to prioritize my own well-being and safety, and whatever I decide to do about Alex legally, I should make sure I'm not making the decision out of guilt or sympathy for him. The therapist also pointed out something I hadn't fully considered, that by creating Emma with such detailed knowledge of my preferences and personality, Alex manipulated me into falling for a person who was essentially designed to be my perfect match. Emma wasn't real, but she was also a reflection of what Alex knew I wanted based on months of studying me. It was like he'd created the perfect bait for an emotional trap. That made me feel even worse because it means my feelings for Emma weren't even fully my own organic feelings. They were responses to carefully calculated manipulation. Alex had used his knowledge of me to make me fall in love with a fake person, which is such a violation of my emotional autonomy that I'm not sure I can fully process it. My friends and family have been supportive, though I haven't told most of them the full story. I told my best friend from college, and he was horrified and angry on my behalf. He said I should definitely press charges, that Alex deserves to be arrested. I told my mom that I was dealing with a difficult roommate situation and needed to move, and she offered to help with moving costs. I didn't tell her the details because I don't think I could handle explaining this to my parents. I did tell my boss that I was dealing with a personal crisis and needed a few days off, and he was understanding. I'm grateful I have a job where I can work remotely if needed, because the idea of going back to the apartment while Alex is there makes me feel sick. Alex has been texting me constantly since I left. He's apologizing, saying he's started seeing a therapist, saying he's found a new place to live and will be out by the end of the month. He's offering to pay for my therapy, my moving costs, whatever I need. He keeps saying he never meant to hurt me, that he cares about me so much and that's why he did what he did, which is such twisted logic that I can barely comprehend it. I haven't responded to most of his texts. I did text him once to say that he needs to be completely moved out within 2 weeks and that I'll be coming by with friends to get the rest of my stuff. I said he should not be there when I come by. He agreed immediately. The hardest part about all of this, weirdly, is that I miss Emma. I know she wasn't real, I know every conversation was actually with Alex, but I still have all these feelings for this person who I thought existed. I miss talking to her every day. I miss having someone who I thought understood me and cared about me. It feels like a breakup, except it's worse than a normal breakup because the person I'm mourning never actually existed. I've gone through the stages of grief almost. Denial at first, not wanting to believe what I discovered. Anger at Alex for what he did. Bargaining, thinking maybe if I'd been a better roommate or noticed the signs, this wouldn't have happened. Depression, feeling sad about losing Emma and betrayed by the whole situation. And I'm working toward acceptance, trying to understand that this happened. It was awful, but I'll eventually be okay. The lawyer I consulted with laid out my options clearly. I could file a police report for the hidden cameras, which would likely result in criminal charges against Alex. I could sue him in civil court for invasion of privacy, emotional distress, and other damages. I could get a restraining order if I felt I needed one, or I could do nothing legally and just move on with my life. Each option has pros and cons. Criminal charges would hold Alex accountable, but would also be stressful and time-consuming for me. A lawsuit could get me money for therapy and other costs, but would also drag things out and keep me connected to this situation. A restraining order would protect me if Alex became dangerous, but seems like overkill since he's agreed to move out and leave me alone. Doing nothing legally would let me move on faster but might leave me feeling like he got away with something terrible. I've been going back and forth constantly. In the morning, I wake up angry and think I should press charges. By evening, I'm exhausted and just want to forget it all happened. I talked to the lawyer about potentially having Alex sign some kind of agreement where he admits what he did, agrees to never contact me again, and maybe pays for my therapy, in exchange for me not pressing criminal charges. The lawyer said that's possible, but I should think carefully about it. What makes the decision harder is that I know Alex is sorry. I know he's mentally unwell. I know he's struggling with his sexuality and clearly has some serious psychological issues. I don't want to be responsible for ruining his life even though he did something terrible to me. But then I think about how he might do this to someone else in the future if he doesn't face serious consequences, and I feel like I have a responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. I've also been thinking about all the signs I missed. There were so many red flags that I ignored because I wanted Emma to be real. The fact that we never met in person after 8 months. The fact that her video calls always had technical issues. The fact that her excuses for why we couldn't meet always seemed to perfectly align with times I was busy too. The fact that she seemed to know things about my day that I didn't remember telling her. If I'd been more skeptical, more cautious, would I have figured it out sooner? Or was Alex's deception so thorough that anyone would have been fooled? I keep second-guessing myself and my judgment. How can I trust my instincts about people anymore when I was so completely wrong about this? My therapist says I need to stop blaming myself. She says Alex is a skilled manipulator who spent months creating an elaborate lie specifically designed to fool me. She says most people would have fallen for it, especially since it was someone I lived with and had no reason to suspect. She says the fact that I'm questioning myself is exactly what manipulators want, for their victims to doubt their own perceptions instead of holding the manipulator accountable. That helps a little, but I still feel stupid. I feel like I should have known. I feel like there should have been some instinct that told me something was wrong. I'm a software engineer, I'm supposed to be logical and analytical, and I completely failed to analyze this situation until it was way too late. I've started looking into support groups for people who have been catfished. I found some online communities, and reading other people's stories has been helpful. It turns out catfishing is way more common than I realized, and some people's stories are even worse than mine. There are people who have been catfished for years, people who have sent money to their catfishers, people who have had their lives completely destroyed by elaborate deceptions. Reading those stories makes me feel less alone but also more disturbed. There are so many people out there who create fake identities online to manipulate others, and it seems like it's getting easier with technology. Deepfakes, AI-generated images, voice modulation software, all of these tools make it possible to create incredibly convincing fake people. How is anyone supposed to trust anyone online anymore? I've decided I'm going to take a break from online dating and online communities for a while. Maybe a long while. I need to rebuild my ability to trust, and I can't do that if I'm constantly wondering if the people I'm talking to online are real. I'm going to focus on meeting people in person in real life where I can verify they're actually who they say they are. Today I went back to the apartment to get my stuff. I brought my friend from college and his brother with me for support and safety. Alex had texted me to confirm he wouldn't be there, and true to his word, the apartment was empty when we arrived. He'd already moved out most of his stuff. Walking into that apartment felt surreal. I'd lived there for a year, and for most of that time I'd thought it was a normal, safe place. Now I knew it had been full of hidden cameras, that my privacy had been violated every single day, that my roommate had been watching me and using that information to manipulate me. The whole place felt contaminated somehow. I quickly packed up all my belongings with my friend's help. While we were packing, I found a letter on the kitchen counter. It was from Alex, addressed to me. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was long and handwritten, another apology, another explanation of his mental state and his feelings. In the letter, Alex talked about his childhood, about growing up in a conservative religious family where being gay was considered sinful. He talked about suppressing his feelings his entire life, about the deep loneliness and self-hatred he'd lived with. He talked about moving to a new city and thinking maybe he could finally be himself, but finding he was still too scared. He said meeting me was the first time he'd felt a real connection with someone. He said he'd been attracted to me immediately, but knew I was straight and wouldn't reciprocate. He said creating Emma was wrong and he knew it was wrong, but it felt like the only way he could express his feelings and have any kind of relationship with me. He said the past 8 months talking to me as Emma had been the happiest time of his life, even though it was built on lies. The letter ended with Alex saying he was moving back to his home state, that he was going to come out to his family and start living openly as a gay man, that he was in intensive therapy and medication for his mental health issues. He said he knew I'd probably never forgive him and he didn't deserve forgiveness, but he wanted me to know that knowing me, even in the twisted way he'd known me, had changed his life and made him want to be a better person. Reading that letter brought up complicated feelings. I was still angry at him, still felt violated and manipulated, but I could also see that he was a profoundly broken person who'd done something terrible out of desperation and mental illness. It didn't excuse what he did, but it added context that made it harder to just see him as a monster. My friend saw me reading the letter and asked what it said. I summarized it and he shook his head. "Don't let him manipulate you with a sob story," my friend said. "Lots of people struggle with their sexuality and mental health and they don't catfish their roommates and install hidden cameras. He made choices, bad choices, and he needs to face consequences." My friend was right, but I still felt conflicted. I finished packing my stuff and we loaded it into a moving truck. I did one final walkthrough of the apartment, partly to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything and partly to say goodbye to this chapter of my life. In my room, I stood where the hidden camera had been and thought about all the private moments that had been recorded without my knowledge. It made me feel sick all over again. We left the apartment and I returned my keys to the landlord. I explained that there had been an unsafe living situation and I needed to break the lease. The landlord was understanding and said that since Alex was also breaking the lease and moving out, they'd just end the lease early for both of us with no penalty. I was relieved I wouldn't have to explain the full story to them. I'm now staying at a temporary sublet while I look for a new permanent place. I've been to several apartment viewings and I'm being much more careful this time. I'm looking for places where I can live alone, even though it's more expensive. I don't think I can handle having a roommate anytime soon, maybe ever. I need my own space where I can feel safe and private. I still haven't decided what to do about pressing charges. The lawyer said I should decide soon because there are time limits on filing criminal complaints and civil suits. I've been leaning toward not pressing criminal charges, but maybe pursuing a civil settlement where Alex pays for my therapy and moving costs and signs an agreement to never contact me again. My therapist thinks that's a reasonable middle ground. She says I shouldn't make the decision based on what's best for Alex, but based on what will help me heal and move forward. She says some people need to see their abusers punished to feel closure, while others just need to know they're safe and can move on. She's helping me figure out which one I am. I've also been processing the grief of losing Emma. Even though she wasn't real, my feelings were real and losing her hurts. I find myself sometimes wanting to text her about something funny that happened or interesting that I learned, and then remembering that she's gone, that she never existed. It's a weird kind of mourning. Part of me wonders who I was actually talking to during all those conversations. Was it Alex's real personality coming through, just filtered through a female persona? Or was Emma entirely constructed, a character he was playing with no basis in who he really is? I'll never know, and that bothers me. I've deleted all the photos and messages from Emma off my phone. I kept copies on a hard drive as evidence just in case, but I removed them from my daily life. I don't want to be tempted to look at them and remember. I need to move forward, and that means letting go of the fake relationship I thought I had. Some people have asked me if I'm angry at the Instagram model whose photos were used for Emma. Honestly, I hadn't thought about her much, but I found her real account and it's weird seeing the actual person behind the photos. She has no idea she was used in this catfishing scheme, and I haven't contacted her because I don't want to freak her out or get involved in more drama. I just hope Alex deleted all the photos he stole from her. I've also been thinking about whether I should have seen this coming based on Alex's behavior. Looking back, he was always very interested in my life, always asking questions, always around when I was on calls with Emma. I thought he was just being friendly, but now I see it was part of his surveillance and manipulation. He was gathering information as Alex to use as Emma, but how could I have known that? People who live together generally take an interest in each other's lives. Roommates often become friends and know details about each other. There's no way I could have guessed that Alex was using that information to maintain a fake identity online. It's not like there's a handbook for spotting when your roommate is catfishing you. I've been more open with people about what happened in vague terms. I've told coworkers that I'm dealing with a difficult personal situation and they've been supportive. I've told a few close friends the full story and they've all been appropriately horrified and supportive. It helps to have people who believe me and validate that what happened was messed up. One friend asked if I might be overreacting, if maybe Alex just made a mistake and I should forgive him. I was pretty upset by that and explained in detail just how elaborate and sustained Alex's deception was. This wasn't a one-time mistake, it was 8 months of daily manipulation, surveillance, and lying. My friend apologized and said they hadn't understood the full scope of it. That interaction made me realize that it's hard for people to fully grasp how violating this experience was unless they hear all the details. People hear catfishing and think it's like an episode of that TV show, unfortunate but not that serious. They don't understand the hidden cameras, the elaborate notes and planning, the theft of someone else's photos, the manipulation of every single conversation for months. I've been having nightmares about it. Dreams where I discover more cameras, or where Emma appears and I don't know if she's real or fake, or where Alex is watching me from somewhere I can't see. I wake up feeling anxious and violated all over again. My therapist says this is normal for trauma and that it should get better with time and processing. The hardest times are late at night when I used to talk to Emma. I'd gotten so used to having those long conversations before bed and now there's just silence. I've tried filling that time with other things, reading, watching shows, talking to real friends, but it's not the same. I miss having that connection even though it was fake. I've been doing a lot of reading about catfishing, online deception, and parasocial relationships. I've learned that what happened to me is more common than I thought, especially the aspect of someone close to the victim being the catfisher. There are cases of family members catfishing each other, coworkers, neighbors, all kinds of situations where the catfisher has access to the victim's real life. The psychological motivations are complex. Sometimes it's about control, sometimes it's about living out a fantasy, sometimes it's about expressing feelings the catfisher can't express as themselves. In Alex's case, it seems to have been a combination of all three. He wanted to control our relationship, live out a fantasy of being with me, and express his feelings in a way that felt safe to him. Understanding the psychology doesn't make me feel better, but it does make the situation feel less random. It wasn't just that Alex was evil or crazy, he was a damaged person who made terrible choices because he didn't have better tools for dealing with his feelings and situation. Again, this doesn't excuse what he did, but it makes it feel less personal somehow. I finally made a decision about the legal situation. I'm not going to press criminal charges, but I am going to pursue a civil settlement. My lawyer contacted Alex's lawyer. Yes, he got a lawyer, and we're working out an agreement where Alex will pay for my therapy costs for the next 2 years, cover my moving expenses, and pay an additional amount for emotional distress. In exchange, I'm agreeing not to file criminal charges or a civil lawsuit. The total comes out to about $30,000, which my lawyer says is reasonable given the circumstances. Alex's lawyer agreed to the terms quickly, which makes me think Alex is desperate to avoid criminal charges. I'm okay with that. I don't want to spend years in court, and the money will actually help me rebuild my life. Part of the settlement is also a non-contact agreement. Alex is legally prohibited from contacting me in any way, including through third parties or fake accounts online. If he violates that, I can immediately file criminal charges without any restrictions. My lawyer says this is a strong protection and that Alex would be stupid to violate it given what he's already done. I feel good about this decision. It holds Alex accountable financially, ensures he faces some consequences, and protects me from future contact, but it doesn't consume my life with a lengthy legal battle. My therapist agrees that this seems like the right choice for my mental health and moving forward. I've found a new apartment, a one-bedroom place in a different neighborhood. It's more expensive than splitting rent with a roommate, but I don't care. I need my own space where I feel completely safe. I've already looked into security systems and I'm getting cameras of my own installed, legitimate ones that I control, so I can monitor my own space and make sure no one is surveilling me. I'm also being much more careful about my online presence. I've made all my social media accounts private, I've stopped sharing personal information in online communities, and I'm generally just much more cautious about who I trust online. It feels sad to be this paranoid, but it also feels necessary after what happened. Work has been a good distraction. I've thrown myself into a big project and it's helping me not think about the situation constantly. My coworkers have noticed I'm quieter than usual, but they're giving me space and not prying. I'm grateful for that. I did tell my parents the full story eventually. I called my mom and explained everything, and she was horrified and wanted to fly out immediately to help me. I told her I was okay, that I was handling it, but it was nice to know she was there if I needed her. My dad was angry and wanted to know if Alex would face criminal charges, and I explained my decision not to pursue them. He understood but said if I changed my mind, he'd help me pay for a lawyer. It's been about 3 weeks now since I discovered the truth. Some days are better than others. I'm slowly starting to feel more like myself, less like a victim of this bizarre situation. I'm going to therapy twice a week and it's helping. I'm journaling about my feelings and experiences, trying to process everything. I've also started being more social in real life. I joined a local board game group and a recreational sports league just to meet people in person and have normal human interactions. It's helping me rebuild my trust in people and remember that most people are not catfishing manipulators. I still think about Emma sometimes. I still feel the loss of that relationship, even though it was fake. My therapist says that's normal and that I'm essentially grieving both the relationship and the betrayal simultaneously. She says it will take time, but eventually the pain will fade and I'll be able to have healthy relationships again. I've thought about whether I could ever date online again, and honestly right now the answer is no. Maybe someday in the future when I've healed more, but right now I can't imagine trusting someone I haven't met in person. I need to see someone, interact with them in real life, verify they're real before I can even consider developing feelings. One positive thing that's come from this is that I'm much more aware of mental health issues and the importance of therapy. If Alex had gotten help earlier, if he'd talked to a therapist about his struggles with his sexuality and his loneliness instead of creating an elaborate catfishing scheme, none of this would have happened. I'm committed to staying in therapy myself and working through my own issues. I've also become more empathetic toward people dealing with privacy violations and online manipulation. I used to think catfishing was something that only happened to naive people or people who weren't paying attention. Now I know that anyone can be fooled by a skilled manipulator, especially someone who has access to your real life and can use that information to make their fake identity more convincing. So that's where I am now. Still processing, still healing, but moving forward. I have a new apartment, a settlement agreement that will help with costs, a therapist I trust, and supportive friends and family. I'm learning to trust my judgment again and to be cautiously optimistic about the future. I don't know if I'll ever fully get over what happened. It's such a bizarre and violating experience that I think it will always be part of my story. But I'm determined not to let it define me or destroy my ability to connect with people. Alex took 8 months of my life and violated my privacy in terrible ways, but he's not going to take my future. If anyone reading this is going through something similar, please know you're not alone. Catfishing and online manipulation are more common than people realize, and it's not your fault if you've been deceived. Get therapy, talk to people you trust, take legal action if you need to, but most importantly, be kind to yourself. You're not stupid for trusting someone, you're human, and to anyone thinking of catfishing someone else, please don't. Please get therapy instead. The harm you cause to the person you're deceiving is real and lasting, and you deserve to express your real feelings as your real self, not through an elaborate lie. There's help available for whatever you're struggling with, and creating fake identities is never the answer. Thanks for reading this incredibly long story. Writing it all out has been therapeutic in its own way. I haven't told many people the full details, and getting it all down in one place helps me process what happened. If you made it this far, I appreciate you taking the time to read about my weird, horrible experience. Edit, wow, I didn't expect so many people to read this or comment. Thank you all for the support and for sharing your own stories. It helps to know I'm not alone in experiencing something like this. To answer some common questions, yes, I'm doing okay. Yes, I'm in therapy. Yes, the settlement is being finalized. No, I haven't had any contact with Alex since the letter he left me. And yes, I'm taking steps to protect my privacy and security going forward. Thank you all again for the kindness and support.